Welcome to the Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. We discuss tough issues facing business and figure out easy-to-implement solutions. Using the rear-view mirror approach, we look in the rear view to move towards a brighter future. Here's your host, Jeff Newkirk.
Welcome to the Forensic Financialist, where we aim to improve your business and help you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host, Jeff Newkirk. Today, we have the distinct privilege of having with us Dr. Rodney Caughron. Dr. Caughron is an associate professor of sport management at Northern Illinois University and has been there for 24 years. Dr. Caughron received his Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Master's in Exercise Science from Iowa State University, and then went on to receive his PhD from the University of Iowa in Athletic Administration. So we'll have to talk about going from a Cyclone to a Hawkeye at some point, since there's a rivalry there.
A bit.
Previous to joining Northern Illinois University, Dr. Caughron served as coordinator of fitness for the Saudi Air Force, and also worked in the athletic ticket departments at both Iowa State and the University of Iowa, and served as strength coach for the football team at Iowa State. He started as liaison between the athletic department and publisher for the books focused on the 100 years of Iowa football. He's lectured often in the UK on U.S. employment law and constitutional law, and has taught in Israel on 2 separate occasions. It's safe to say that Dr. Caughron is an expert in the field of sport management, leadership, and the legal aspects thereof. So, Dr. Caughron, I'll refer to you as Rod. I've known you a while. Welcome to the podcast. I'm glad that you're here. I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, so kind of kick us off. Tell us a little bit about what it's like right now teaching at the college level when we are trying to come out of this pandemic.
I kind of pioneered online teaching in my department a little bit. I teach because I still love the fitness area. I teach in the summer. I teach PE 100, which is a fitness wellness class, and I had put that online. Because that's essentially the efficiency of it's a gen ed. So it's an efficient way to offer it during the summer. Students don't have to come to campus, things like that. So I knew how to teach online, and I actually had taken both of my law classes online. The graduate law and the undergraduate law are both online. But I do like to teach management because that's the other class I teach now. I do like to teach that in person because it's a much more personable thing. And having had you review my lecture slides for the graduate level, it's because you ask those personal questions. Because I think leadership and management are combined. I call it leader management, but being able to connect with students. And like we were talking previously, what's nice about teaching, and that's why I assume everybody went into it, is to have that relationship with students, getting to know them, being able to help them when they need it, seeing them grow in the years that you know them.
Impact.
Right. You really do. And in many cases, I've actually been able to recognize a quality in that person that they didn't recognize and say, you know what, you'd be better in this area. I have a former student who was just absolutely brilliant. Actually went to Northern Colorado, sent him out there with Dave Stotler.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience that's a great place to be.
Yeah, it was. He's gone, and the other Linda Gray is gone, and those they're all gone. So I don't know the quality anymore. But at that time, that to me was the best sport management program, a PhD program. So he went out there, and now he's a successful professor, influencing other people because he's just
awesome.
he had that, but he didn't recognize the idea of becoming a professor as an option. So I take, obviously they have to make the decision, but at the same time, you take that pride in helping those people get to the point in their life and then watching them grow.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that takes some interaction in person.
Right.
I think doing that virtually, having that impact on your students from a virtual perspective is extremely challenging, and you can't really get to know the student and what they're all about other than what you see them submit online.
Right.
And I think it puts you as the professor in a very difficult position.
Well, and most people think, online teaching, that's a piece of cake. The way I do it, no, it's terrible because, I'm literally, because unfortunately this semester I have 105 students. I have 40 in my undergraduate management, 40 in my undergraduate law, and they both have huge assignments. And I used to do some group projects within class, and now I have to do individual projects where I have to read every one of them. And so, along with the graduate class that has, 25 people or so, I have 105 assignments that I have to read multiple times in that there's multiple assignments. So, no more group
That's
stuff.
a lot of reading, right?
It is, and typing, as we were talking about before. Right. I have to get up a lot just because, just to refresh my brain as well as my body from sitting so long. So I literally come in at 9 or 10 in the morning and then leave at 5. 5 days a week, and sometimes I come in on the weekend.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and sitting in front of the computer is so I can tell the excitement in your voice. It's so much different than being in the classroom and interacting with the students. And I just hope that we can get back to that setting where we're in the classroom. We can see the students in person. We can meet with them in person and see that impact that I know that you're making on your students right away. Because this virtual, I just don't think it's...
No. And in the sport, how important connections are. And I always tell them that, the people around you are your first connections in sport. And if you can't make that personal connection where you develop a friendship, and even if it's just a superficial one in which you keep in contact because you're both going to be successful, the thing is you don't have that anymore. So your first line of connections to get into the sport world are now gone.
That's right.
As well as as we were talking before, how do I write a letter of reference? Although, as I say, I never should be a letter of reference if you're going to go into the real world. If you're going to go into the academic world, I can go ahead and do that. But I should never be a reference because you should have gotten the experience in the real world that you have 5 people that can write something for you, and I'm the last resort. So,
although you can speak to somebody's character, if
right,
in the classroom and working, and I have to, Rod and I, you and I go back a ways. We've known each other for I don't know how long, but it's been a while.
At least probably 16 years.
Yeah, and I still have contacts from the classes that I taught while I was at Northern Illinois.
Good.
So, yeah, I think that just speaks to the importance of making those contacts and keeping them for as long as you can.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit to what's going on in the sports world with regard to college sport, professional sport, and how this pandemic and what's going on in our country right now has impacted sport.
Okay.
How do you see us coming out of this?
To be honest, if it were just a pandemic, I think we would be okay. Obviously, at the collegiate level, I can't see how they can sustain it. I know here at NIU, we were running it, we don't make money. The university was supplementing the department, and I mean that's what 200 and some, or at the Division I level, I think there's now 111 or something like that schools. I mean, that's 100 schools that's happening to. NIU might be in a better position, in fact, than some schools. Guy that I know, tried to get him as a student, unfortunately went somewhere else. He's the AD at Chicago State. I mean, Chicago State is crumbling financially. They're even worse straits than we are, and I can't imagine. I'm actually going to try to have lunch with him sometime just to talk about that, and maybe even bring him in as a podcast for my class about how do you deal with this financial stuff. Because at the collegiate level, it's just devastating. So at the professional level, obviously they're profitable and they can make it. But one of the best leagues that I loved, the U.S. Rugby Association, filed bankruptcy, and I don't know if they're going to be able to come back. Emerging sport actually was growing leaps and bounds. The one study I saw between 2000 and 2010 or something like that, they'd grown over 300% in terms of financials and stuff. I mean, the
league was growing. Down here in the Houston area, and I think that it was gaining a lot of traction.
But when you have no games and you just can't run business,
tickets and all the other things that go along with putting on the event, it becomes economically impossible.
Right. So, and even like the women's emerging professional soccer league, I don't know, unless U.S. Soccer shifts a ton of money, the MLS or whatever, or whoever's financially supporting them, I don't know how they can support themselves. They didn't have a huge fan base. No, exactly. Because I mean, and we'll get into that, but the NBA is crashing and burning. So financially, or they will be in a year, in my prediction anyway.
Can't be any other way.
No. Yeah. So I think sport, it's very interesting. Sport is in dire straits, along with other businesses, obviously, and other sectors in the economy. But I think sport even more so.
Well, and because people see it as more of a, luxury item in order to, they're spending their own discretionary income to go to an event, or, it's not something that they need. Like a roof over their head or food on the table.
Right.
And, when it comes down to it, what are you going to sacrifice? Are you going to sacrifice a trip to the grocery store or going to see a sporting event? Well, unfortunately, they're going to not see the sporting event. And it's going to be, I think it's going to take a long time for us to recover from this, because there's not only have we hurt the industry economically, of course, but there's such disparity in how things are being treated. Some big-time conferences like the Big Ten, no fall sports, and you get the SEC, and they're having sport, and they're changing the way you can attend, but they're still having the event. I don't understand how that can happen. What is the take on
Well, I think it's going to increase the disparity. I mean, even like the Big Ten, I come from the Big Ten. Even the Big Ten, I mean, we had tons of money. I mean, that's, we have our own network and things like that. But when you get rid of even the video part, because they could make money just on the Big Ten network or selling the football, even if the stadium is empty, they can still make money by streaming their games. But when you cancel that part out, you're literally losing millions of dollars a week.
Oh my goodness!
Because are they getting rid of the personnel? And why do you need marketing people? And what do you say on, if you have a digital marketing person for their online stuff, what are they saying? I know we're getting some stuff here, and I get stuff from Iowa State as well as Iowa, but it's kind of like stuff you could care less about. It's not interesting. It's not about the sport.
Yeah, and we both spent time in Iowa City, and we know what football Saturday is like.
Oh my God, City. Yeah.
And to not have that has got to be absolutely decimating to the local economy. Think of all the businesses in Iowa City that really the majority of their revenue came on football Saturdays.
Yeah. And even just the independent vendors, we made money off of licensing, obviously, but they were making money hand and foot because they just bring in a table, folding tables in a tent, and sell T-shirts. And as people walked to the game, they bought those T-shirts.
Right.
And so we're making money, they're making money, and like you said, restaurants and things like that, just dying.
Yeah.
So
it's sad. And I hope we can come out of this sooner than later, because it's put a real hurt on our economy, but it's also damaged our psychology, right?
Well, and our culture. Our culture is because we are a sporting culture. My life is involved in that culture. Much more than most people's, just because that's what I do. But our whole culture is based on football Saturday or going to a baseball game, and just kind of, I don't drink, but most people buy a beer and get a hot dog. It's just part of life, and then you share that with your kids, and you pass that on. So
and when you can't do that, it just has short-term, and I think it will have definitely long-term.
Well, and we see both the long-term and the short-term in the number of suicides, which is just devastating. When you have the total, I think it was in May, the one state was saying they had the same number of suicides in 1 month that they have in an entire year, because people are being psychologically affected by this, and
the most painful thing is that we knew that back in March when this all happened, that was going to be one of the outcomes.
Right. More people have died than have died of COVID from suicide, and because people are afraid to go to hospitals. They're not getting diagnosed with diseases that could be preventable, and they're dying from them. So it's just the whole thing is just bizarre. We're in a bizarre world right now.
So let's transition then to the professional sports, and specifically the NBA. You referenced that it's going to be a league that's going to be really challenged over the next year, 2 years, beyond that financially. What are some of the things that you see that we can change in that league to make things better, if anything?
Well, I think one of the things that is happening, obviously, we're having political issues, and I'm not taking either side, because I hate politics in sport. Either side, I don't care.
It doesn't belong in sport, right?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And what all the leagues are finding out that are doing this, and this is what's interesting about tennis. Tennis hasn't gotten political, and tennis is thriving right now with the U.S. Open occurring and things like that. They're playing, and
a glimmer of hope.
People are watching it on TV because they love sport, and even if you don't like tennis, which I do, people are still watching it because it's sport. The problem is that now if you have a 50-50 split in political viewpoint on right and left, and I'm making it very simplistic, the thing is if as a league you take sides on one side or the other, you just lost 50% of your fans.
That's right.
And one of the things, it was interesting, I watched a thing on YouTube yesterday about LeBron James, and how the younger players are going, who the hell do you think you are? He gave this speech to a bunch of young players in the NBA, and because he's really running the NBA right now. And it's all about his brand, and that's the way they came about. And this commentator on ESPN was saying that he's ruining the NBA. And then you look at it's really interesting because I'm a student of history, and I studied Chinese history and as an undergraduate, and Mao and things like that, the Cultural Revolution, which we're seeing here in the United States right now. But the irony of the Chinese essentially enslaving people in their country, the Muslims, the Christians, and even they have, because they have an association with the African nations, there's African workers there. They're actually enslaving them in their country to work in factories and stuff, and LeBron James won't condemn them. And a lot of people are seeing that irony, and it's all because of his brand and his revenue. And I think that's going to backlash on him, but because he represents the NBA right now, I think that's going to backlash even more so on the NBA. And
that's interesting.
And if you look at China, China's about ready to collapse because I don't know if you've followed what's going on over there. Their weather disasters, if the Three Gorges Dam is successful and actually doesn't collapse, several million people won't die. But even at that, it literally they're looking at hundreds of thousands of people dying, because it will happen in a second. And, they're talking like 8 stories in the first couple major cities that have several million people in them. But then they have that. Also, their intervention in the South China Sea. There's now an alliance between India, Australia, and Japan in that area, along with Vietnam and a couple other countries that are just saying, hey, stop this. And so they're having issues, and their incursion into Hong Kong and breaking the treaty. People are now leaving there. Their manufacturing, actually moving it to Bangladesh and Vietnam, a lot of it, and India. And bringing some back to the United States. So financially, they're going to not do well, and are they going to be able to then pay the NBA and all the money that they do pay them? So
Right.
I had a former student work for the Houston Rockets, actually, and when Yao Min, right? When he actually got hurt and was done, they actually laid off a bunch of people because they were getting so much money from China in their broadcast rights and stuff, and now there wasn't a Chinese player on that team, and they laid people off because they lost so much money.
I'm sure that most people do not know that. So the Houston Rockets, they were receiving revenue from China because of one of their players.
And the thing is in China, it's interesting. If a Chinese player comes over here, you're not dealing with an agent to negotiate the contract. You're dealing with the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, because they own...
Acting on behalf of the athlete.
Right. They own the rights to that athlete. And so, and then when they get that, they obviously want the TV rights, and they pay the team a lot for the television rights, and now the team becomes dependent on that. And then when that player leaves or is hurt or whatever, they lose all that revenue. And so money talks. There's a loyalty based on who's paying the bills. And unfortunately, China may not be a great client anymore, both politically as well as financially. So I think that's something that people should be watching for in the next year. And also the brand of LeBron James. Is this going to hurt him and his activism as well?
Right.
But mostly the Chinese connection.
So Rod, you're making a prediction a year from now.
No, I don't make predictions. I'm not God. Although our names rhyme.
But I won't hold you to it then.
Okay, good. But I think that's something Yeah, I think something that people should look at and watch.
Interesting. Well, I would guess that most people do not have any knowledge of the impact that China has on sport in this country.
Especially the NBA.
Yeah, exactly.
Not as much, I don't think, on Major League Baseball, because we've tried to make inroads there and we just haven't been very successful. But, it's just...
well, the NBA just seems to be struggling anyway. Take the China variable out of the equation, and it appears to me that they're just having really a tough time keeping their fan base. In fact, I think data has shown that it's diminishing. Correct?
I think in the last up to this year, since 14, and I don't quote me on these numbers, their viewership went down 25%. And now with all the stuff that's going on politically, it's gone down. And I don't know if it's an additive 40% or if it's a total of 40%. But we're talking almost 50% of your viewership.
Wow. Wow. That's a lot. That's a big number. That's a big revenue impact.
Right. And
difficult to overcome.
If you're a TV station, why would you say, hey, I'm going to continue to pay you, $1 billion for your contract to televise your games when literally nobody is watching? It's like bowling. You're old enough, I think, to remember when on Saturday afternoon, professional bowling was on TV, and that was huge. And it's actually coming back, interestingly enough. But yeah, that was huge, and all of a sudden, nobody watched it. And so,
the great bowler was Earl Anthony.
Yeah, and I remember a few of them, and we actually, as a family, watched it. But I think golf is going to benefit from this because they're playing, and they haven't been politicized. And because of COVID, they're able to get out on the course. They may not have fans out there, so they'll lose ticket revenue. But that's mostly the local sponsor of it, the golf course itself. But the league itself is going to be doing well.
They're in a better position to sustain this. Interesting. This is interesting stuff. How do you see this impacting students now and their level of interest in sport management? Sport management hasn't been around, for forever. It's something that just, what was the first program was in the 80s? Yeah,
Ohio. Ohio University.
So it's relatively new study comparatively.
Like philosophy.
How is this going to impact the interest of students that may have some interest in sport management?
Well,
I don't know.
No, I think it'll be really interesting because, one of the problems is, I know at like Texas A&M, they have an undergraduate program with over 500 students in it. Our program, we just started an undergraduate program. We went from the first year without much advertising or anything. We went from 70 students. We've doubled that now in the second year. Students want to get into this area. But I tell students, when I've recruited students, especially when I did it at the graduate level, I would always tell them the likelihood of you getting a job in sport is very low. And if we look out 5 to 10 years, you're not going to be in sport. I've had students who had great jobs. Absolutely. I had a student that worked for the White Sox. He was commuting an hour and a half every day into Chicago. He lived in Harvard here in Illinois. And
he drove from Harvard, which is near Wisconsin,
every day, and he had to be there.
To the south side.
Yes. And
that's a passion for your job.
No, it was, and I tell you, they loved him. He actually has Reinsdorf humidor. Reinsdorf gave him because they both smoke cigars. So, because I have him come in because he's now our development director for athletics, so he had this great job, but he he got tired of the commute, and his wife had a great job. She's a teacher, and they didn't want to move. They loved where they were at. They were just starting to have kids and stuff, so he quit. And went into hospital development and was successful, then university development. Now he's here in athletic development. But but if you look at my Facebook page of all the former students that I had, about 80% of those are in real estate. They're good at sales. They're good at sales, because when I would teach anything, I'm always talking about you have to sell. You have to sell. So
we sell every day.
Yeah,
we sell ourselves, and whether we like it or not, it'll always be that way, and we always have to sell.
Yeah, I never liked sales. I always said I was never going to go into sales, but even as a professor, if I want students in our program, I have to sell the program. And so I literally would meet with parents and answer all their questions before they answered them, because I knew what the questions were. And to me, that's good sales.
Right. Yeah. So make sure that you address all of the uncertainties, give people what they want, and you will be successful.
And I was honest, and I would even tell the parents that their child most likely would not go into sales, but they'll have a good time, and they'll get to do their internship in sports, and it's something that they will always remember. So, but to get to your original question, it's going to be very, very interesting, because if you're rational and not thinking emotional, as I love sport, you will not go into sport management. If you go into a sport management program that is a business program, which I've always advocated, then, like I said, most of our students work in the real world. I don't call sport the real world. They work in the real world, and they have good paying jobs, and they go up, and I've seen them become vice presidents and things like that of companies, and actually CEOs. I know a few that are CEOs of major corporations. So,
that's wonderful. Good for them. Well, I do think that in order for somebody to be successful in sport management, they have to know business.
Oh, yeah.
They have to be well-versed in financial management, people skills, leadership. I don't think there's any way to get to a level of success without having some level of business acumen. And for those programs that are lacking in including some of the business classes, just the core stuff, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to survive long term.
I talked to the president of a major hockey team, and you can kind of get a sense of who I was talking to, but I asked him, what do you want in a sport management academic program? And the first thing he said was, I don't want sports sociology, and I don't want sports psychology. And because
that's not surprising, is it?
No, it wasn't to me, because I knew the business. I know what you need. You need business acumen. But you don't need to feel good about yourself and others. I mean, you should have that anyway. If you're good at business, you have that. So, I mean, and I never included that into any of my programs. So,
and it's interesting that you say that. I was just trying to visualize Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, calling somebody into his office and saying, "Well, tell me how you feel about that today."
Right.
How are you feeling? That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen.
There shouldn't be a lot of, and most people would argue, but there shouldn't be a lot of emotion, because as you and I both know, and I teach this, I teach emotional intelligence, but that's completely different. That's being able to read people. It's not, involving an emotional issue.
That's correct. Yeah,
but it's reading what motivates people in a good way to make them more successful. But it's just there's not a whole lot of soft and fuzzy stuff, and there shouldn't be, because that takes you away from what your mission is.
Well, that's the emotion,
right?
And I've always used the term emotion high, logic low. You can't make a good decision. You can't process information logically when you're emotionally charged.
Right.
Your ability to process information diminishes significantly as you gain more emotion associated with the subject. If you can keep your emotions in check, then you can make a good decision because you're able to process all the information that you have to have in mind in order to make that decision.
And that's I like if you ever get a chance, read the book Primal Leadership. It's kind of an older book now by Goldman. It's about emotional intelligence, but in a leadership context. And that's essentially the whole concept of emotional intelligence, is that you control your own emotions so that you can go ahead and help other people control theirs and to get where you want them to be and where they should be from a business standpoint. So,
and isn't that interesting? You control your own emotions so you can help others control their emotions. And how often do we see that today?
Unfortunately, we're not doing it anymore.
No.
You know, we're letting people, to use your coin, is that they're not being logical. They're being emotional, and they're making decisions based on that, and they're all the wrong decisions. And they're getting in trouble because of it. Students are failing out of college because of it.
Absolutely. Well, Rod, this has been a great conversation. I can't thank you enough for taking time today to talk through all that you're experiencing in the world of academics and sport management. I would ask just one last question. If you had one piece of advice for somebody that is currently in sport and not sure of the instability, what would be the one suggestion that you would give them to help them sustain through this craziness?
Right. It's hard to just give one, but it kind of coalesces around the idea of work your butt off. Volunteer, get out, do something. I get people that have, even at the master's level, where they get done with their master's degree or even their bachelor's degree, and they have nothing to put on the resume to get an internship. They have nothing. And the thing is I constantly tell people, you know what, instead of playing video games, get over in the athletic department. There's, here in DeKalb, I mean, within 50 miles, or even 25, you got Naperville and you got a couple colleges there and stuff that don't have big budgets. They would love to have volunteers help them out, either on game day or, and these people aren't doing those things. And what's interesting is I know who's going to win. Of my students, because I watched them. A young man actually just got into we have an analytics program now in the College of Business, and I just wrote a letter for him to get in there. But he was working over in athletics, volunteering with the basketball team, the women's basketball team. Well, they just gave him a graduate assistantship. Another guy, and I love this story, and I do want to relate this story to you to show what you need to do. Kid from the South Side, from inner city Miami, black kid, had no hope, absolutely no hope. Gangs, poverty, things like that. Mother wasn't involved. He went between his grandmother and his grandparents and his father. Made a decision. Tough environment for this young person. Right. Well, essentially no hope for the most part. But he made a decision in high school. I want to get out of this. And he said the way to do it is I have to do academically. I have to get into a university. And 2, I have to continue to play football to get a scholarship. Well, he did both. He got into NIU and worked his butt off in both areas. He was a marketing major. Worked his butt off, and during the summers, instead of going home, he volunteered over in the athletic department and the marketing department. And once they got used to him, they started paying him. But when it came time to go to graduate school, they gave him a graduate assistantship because they knew he'd worked hard. He had 1 year of eligibility left. Got in, so he got his degree in 4 years. Playing football, which is impressive to begin with. And then,
that is impressive.
He's got a graduate assistantship, worked his butt off when he was here, did a lot of work over in athletics. His first job was with Dallas, selling the tours to the new stadium. Made a ton of money. Then he went on to the Jaguars. He was up with the Cubs, and unfortunately, he left 6 months before they won the championship. But went down to Miami, and now he's with the Dolphins, and now he's with the baseball team there, and in a high level position.
So
and
he's made a place for himself, and he's worked hard, he's endured, and now he's successful.
Right, and he took the time to do work, even though he wasn't being compensated at that time. But I tell you what, when you talk to this guy, oh God, I love him. He's just my ideal student. He has a plan. He said every 2 years I want to change jobs or move up within the same organization, and he's done that. And he's just and he's a great guy. So I love success stories, and I've seen several of those where it's just, wow, that's amazing. And it's all because of hard work, willing to volunteer, and hard work there. Staying with your academics, you may sacrifice some social, but what kind of social activity is there playing a game by yourself?
Right. Well, I think it boils down to doing the right thing, right?
Right.
I mean, when this young person was in a bad situation, horrible environment, and he made it work. And he made it work because he did the right thing. He wasn't worried about what's in it for me for the next 5 minutes. How are you going to help me?
Right. What's that shiny object? I call it the shiny object syndrome. Is they see a shiny object and they're distracted and go do something else or buy something they don't need.
Yeah.
So
I think you have to have the thought process of, what can I do for you? How can I make your life better? And not worry about the immediate monetary, gain. You have to worry about doing what's right, helping somebody else. The money will follow. It'll happen. But you got to do the right thing first.
And a great quote I have from our former associate AD, Rodney Caughron, great guy. I had him come to my graduate management class. I can't remember. But he came to the class, and he was just talking about his job and how he got it and things like that. But then the one thing that stuck with me all these years, and I mean, we're talking, this is at least 20 years probably, is he said, everybody is watching you, and remember that. And it goes along with what you just said, is if I am there to make your life better, you notice that, and other people that aren't even associated with me, they're peripheral to that situation, are seeing the same thing. And in the long term, that's going to pay off, because those people are going to come to you and say, hey, you know what, a friend of mine has this job. Are you interested? Because they want that good person to be with their friend. So
it's interesting. Everybody is watching you, whether it's directly or indirectly, whether it's right now or sometime later in the future.
Right. They remember who you were.
Yeah.
They remember who you were. So if you're screwing around,
that is a good quote to remember.
Yeah, no, I love that quote, and I use it all the time. Robert may not know it, but I use that quote from him all the time to my classes to say, hey, remember this. I'm watching you, but there's other people. Your fellow classmates are watching you. And when they see you being a jerk and kind of, when you push aside group projects and you let other people do all the work, well, that person in that group that did all the work remembers that. And they may be in a situation to hire somebody. They're not going to hire you or recommend you for a hire. They're going to get somebody else that worked.
That's right.
I think that's a life lesson for everybody, no matter what business you're in.
Even for some of us that are what I'd like to call seasoned. We've been around for a while.
Yeah. I'm old, so I know.
I don't want to say old.
Yeah, I'm a realist.
Some days I feel it.
But what's really sad, though, to kind of blow my own horn here, I'm in better shape than, I'm 61. I'm in better shape than about 50%, if not more, than the freshmen. So I don't know what the hell they're doing.
You don't... For anybody that knows you, you do not look anywhere close to 61.
Well, thank you.
You don't.
I give you a virtual hug.
Wow. It's been great talking with you.
Oh, it's been great.
A great program at Northern Illinois. If anybody's interested in learning more about the sport management program or Northern Illinois in general, can they just contact you at the university or just go to www.niu.edu? Or what's the
I would just type in niu.edu, go to the A to Z menu and click K. We're in the kinesiology department, and there's only 2 Ks, so it's easy. And then just click that, and then it'll take you to the sport management program.
Awesome. Very good. Dr. Rod Caughron, sport management expert. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. I hope you come back sometime and talk with us again, and hopefully we'll have better things to talk about with this pandemic and everything else going on in our country.
Come back in a year and see where LeBron James is.
Yes. Well, we're gonna have that conversation again because I'm not going to hold you to the prediction, but at least we're going to go back and revisit that conversation. But
yes,
again, thank you so much.
And once I'm done with the preliminary stuff in this semester, I'm going to make sure I read your book, because I did buy the book, and I have it on my Kindle. So I will be reading your book.
Awesome. Yes, Understandable Solutions, Confessions of a Forensic Financialist. So
there you go. See, I get your plug.
A fancy title for a very simple, easy approach to business assessment. And I just really wanted to make something that was really usable, if you will, for somebody that does not have a business background. And hopefully I achieved that. Book 2 is in the works.
And I'm hoping to steal some of the stuff in that book and put it in my lectures. So
please do. Yeah, I hope I hope it works for you. That's the whole point of writing it. So.
I agree. It's and that's the stuff I gave you. If you ever teach a management class, you can use that. I don't care. I want people to learn and not have to pay money for a worthless textbook. So
couldn't agree more. It's got to be something that people get some value from.
That's their job.
Yep, absolutely. So. Thank you so much, Dr. Caughron. It's been great talking with you. Again, hopefully you can come back and we'll talk again sooner than a year from now. So we'll have something better to talk about than LeBron James in China. But thank you so much.
Something hopeful. Yes, thank you, Dr. Newkirk.
Yeah. Okay. Very good, very good. And to all the listeners and followers, I'm always grateful that you listened. If you feel compelled to follow me in my podcast, that would be awesome. It's The Forensic Financialist. And as I always say at the end of a podcast, I hope you got at least one nugget of useful information and maybe even got a little inspired. If you want to talk business consulting or coaching, please reach out. My website is www.theforensicfinancialist.com, or you can just email me directly at info@understandablesolutions.com. I hope to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening. Make it a great day and make tomorrow even better. Peace, everyone.
You've been listening to The Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. To learn more about Jeff, visit his website at understandablesolutions.com or email Jeff at jeff@understandablesolutions.com. Mentioning this podcast will get you a complimentary discovery session with Jeff. Until next time.